Story time. So just when I thought dating couldn't get any worse, surprise, it did. I went on this date. It was like a FaceTime date the other night with this guy, and it was going okay at first. It was a little bit awkward, but it was fine. Pretty soon into the date, he asked me what my type was. And I said, well, I don't really have a type. Like, all my exes are pretty different, which is true. And then I asked him what his type was. He looked me straight in the eyes and said to me, well, normally I go for really strong, motivated, and independent women, but they're all pretty heartless. So I'm trying something different. Excuse me, bitch?
Okay, story time. So I work at a jewelry store, and today a man came in looking for a gift for his wife for their 10th year anniversary. He ended up picking out a piece that said, "My beautiful wife." And I said, "Anything else for you today?" And he said, "No, that's it for her, but I do want to make another purchase using a separate credit card. And could you possibly create a different account for me?" And I said, "Sure, what are you looking for?" And he said, "Do you have anything that says girlfriend?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Perfect, I'll take it. And do you have anything that says happy 1-year anniversary to go with it?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Perfect, I'll take it." So I boxed everything up all nice and I put them in their respected bags. He had me mark a K for Kristen on the bottom of his wife's bag and an L for Laura on the bottom of his girlfriend's bag. I put pretty bows on them. I handed it to him. I said, "They're gonna love it. Have a nice day." And he said, "Thank you." And shit, I just remembered that his wife's name is Laura and his girlfriend's name is Kristen. I must have mixed up the bags. Oops.
When I was 17, my family actually forgot about my birthday, so when I told my best friend, she felt really bad for me and convinced her family to do something with me. So they took me out to eat at a restaurant where they throw like bread rolls at you, and they told the waitress that it was my birthday. So the waitress asked me to stand up, and I was like, no. But everyone kept staring at me, and my best friend was like, just stand up. So I stood up, and the waitress announced to everyone in the room that it was my birthday, and she asked everyone to sing happy birthday with her, but absolutely nobody sang, so it was quiet. So I slowly sit back down on my chair and I look over to my friend and she's just laughing because this is hilarious to her. And then I look over at the waitress and she looks scared and she starts giving me a bunch of extra bread rolls and she's like, "I am so sorry." Needless to say, it was very awkward and a birthday that I will never forget.
Be careful on who you decide to meet up with on a dating app because you might just end up on a date with a narcissist. When I was in Denver, I ended up matching with a really hot 39-year-old who also happened to be a lawyer. He recently called off an engagement, so casually dating other people was kinda in the books for me. Before meeting him, I made sure I took all the usual precautions. We made it very, very clear what our boundaries were and said that there was no expectations. So like either of us could leave after a drink and it would be totally fine. Also, we made sure to FaceTime and he seemed super sweet, totally normal. However, the second we sat down, it seemed like he was on drugs. He would literally talk a million miles an hour about himself and wouldn't let me get a breath in. And the stuff he was bringing up was just odd. Like he even included that he broke off an engagement too. Hold on to that thought. 2 drinks in, this man leans over and says, "I've been diagnosed with bipolar and schizophrenic disorder, but I didn't want to talk about it over text." Because I don't know a whole lot about those mental disorders, I felt a little uncomfy. I also didn't feel like that was a first date topic. Then he literally starts joking about murdering me and states that he would use my dead body for Face ID to text my friend that I'm safe so the timing is off for the investigation. Like for part 2. Part 2 of going on a date with a narcissist. So I start getting uncomfy and getting ready to leave. He offers to call a car and I say, "Oh no, it's fine, you got my drink, I'm just gonna go." And he gets confused and he's like, "Wait, what's going on here? Are we not going home together?" I expressed that I was just tired and I wanted to get back to my hotel so that I could sleep and get on the road in the morning. He could not have been more offended by this and kept trying to make sexual comments to get me to come back to his place. Like, no, that's creeping me out more. So I get into my Uber and I make it home alone. And he texts me, "Tell Elise I said happy birthday tomorrow." That is my mom's name and it was her birthday tomorrow, but I didn't tell him any of this information over drinks. That's when I realized he had found my Facebook and then he called me. He proceeded to go off and lecture me because he couldn't comprehend why I wouldn't sleep with someone as great as he is. He expressed how much better he is than my ex-fiance, who I never brought up over dinner. This is when he let me know that he did his research on me before even meeting me. And I realized that a lot of the conversations that we had over drinks was him just verifying that I was the same person he found on Facebook. He still contacts me and I don't know what to do or say. Storytime, how I found out my substitute teacher was actually my biological father. So of course I went to school for our usual class and our teacher wasn't there. So we had a substitute that day and I could have sworn that I recognized him, but I couldn't tell from where. There would be times during the lecture where I would look up and he would just be looking at me. I felt like there was a weird connection between the two of us, but I didn't exactly know where to place it. Since it was the last hour of the day, he asked me to stay after class. I immediately got the creeps and said no, I had to catch my bus. And I hadn't seen him for weeks after that. Some days later, I noticed a for sale sign on my neighbor's yard. So during their open house, I decided to peek out my window and see who was visiting. And there he was, my substitute teacher. I got the creeps and I just ran upstairs to focus on something else. Once the house sold and the move-in trucks came in, I saw that it was my substitute teacher that actually bought it. I was terrified but still felt this weird connection. That's when my mom offered for us to bring cookies over to his house. She said it was the neighborly thing to do, so that's what we did. So we went to go knock on his door. Stay tuned for part 2 and add me on Instagram. Okay, so part 2 to finding out my substitute teacher was actually my biological father. So the whole interaction between my mom and him was so odd. He was clearly high, so my mom just set the cookies down on his front door. And we just left. Many nights after that, I just felt like someone was always watching me. I constantly got the creeps, and I would just notice like little stuff going missing. But I never thought it was that big of a deal. But a few days later, this man invited us over for a dinner, and my mom made me go. And it was just as strange. Like, I could tell that my mom was so uncomfortable. I asked to be excused to go to the bathroom, and once he showed me where it was, I did a little bit of snooping. In a room close to his bathroom, there was pictures of us. Like my mom and I, and baby pictures of me, and also recent pictures that we were completely unaware of. I ran downstairs and grabbed my mom and told her that we had to leave. She agreed, and once I told her about the pictures, we filed a police report. The police told me he was my biological father, and he was in the process of searching for me for 3 years. And to this day, my mom has still not talked to me about the situation. Sometimes you have to trust your gut. Add me on Instagram, and if you have a story you'd like to share, DM me.
This is why you should never leave the table when you're on a blind date. One of my best friends and I worked at the same restaurant. When I came in later that day for my shift, she told me a crazy story. She said that her first table were this guy and this girl, and she could tell they were on a first date. The girl was nervous, so she ordered a glass of wine. As far as she knew, the date seemed to be going well, and the girl got up to go to the bathroom. Right when my friend was about to come over and bring the silverware, she saw him put something in her wine. My friend, obviously terrified and freaking out, let our manager know, who then let the police know, and ran into the bathroom to tell her what was going on. The girl ended up staying in the bathroom until the police came, arrested him, and escorted him out of the building. It was noon on a Tuesday. You don't think you're going to be drugged at noon on a Tuesday.
So there's this customer that comes into my store probably like once or twice a week. He works with a program called Instacart. He basically buys people's groceries for them so they don't have to leave the house, and he delivers them to them. So we're having a conversation at my register one day, and he made a gross sexual comment. It gave me very much pedophile vibes, and I was like, relax. And he was like, oh, no, like, I'm just joking. I joke with all the girls here like that. I don't know if it's because I watch too much TV, but that shit didn't sound right. My spidey senses tingling off the charts. I was like, this dude is a fucking weirdo. If you're a rewards member at my store, your name comes up on my computer screen when you type in your phone number. So being that the sex offender database is public information, I went out on a limb here, and what naturally occurred to me in my big old badonga was to look up his name. And what happened when I looked up his name? Sex offender. Yeah. How's he an Instacart worker?
Something fun. When you're in a long-term relationship, you'll often find yourself doing this thing with your partner where you'll say, when we have kids, I hope they have this trait of yours. And today my husband was like, I hope our kids will be as resilient and determined as you. When I was 11 years old, I got in a fight with my mum when she was picking me up from school, and I was being so rude that she wanted to teach me a lesson and scare me a little bit. So she said, you can find your own way home. Left me outside of my classroom, got in her car and drove off. Now realistically, she was just doing the block and was going to come back and pick me up, hoping that I would be apologetic. But I wasn't. I was very stubborn and was like, I can find my own way home. And I decided to run home. I in fact sprinted from the school grounds and ran into a close family friend who offered to give me a lift, which I accepted, and I got home by my own means. Now my mum did do the block and not only came back to me not being where she left me, but to one of my friends saying, yeah, I saw her get in the car with some weird guy. Imagining my mum's soul leaving her body that day is enough for me to not ever want kids, let alone kids like me.
I was recently reminded of the fact that I accidentally rigged my junior year homecoming king vote.
American schools, we have dances and then we vote for someone in that grade to become the king and queen of the dance, and I don't know why. So in English, and they just give us slips of paper that says, like, write down who you want in your grade of king and queen. So I'm sitting there, like, not caring about this at all, and so I say out loud, who would hate this the most? So I look to my left, and there's it's Josh! And Josh hates everything and everyone, and so I say out loud, Josh would hate this! And he makes the fatal mistake of saying, you better not. And then everyone's like, that's a great idea, and they put Josh's name down! So a week later, they do morning announcements, and the English class freaks out because Josh won, and everyone else in every other class is like, how? I don't think he ever forgave me for that!
This story time is a warning to please be cautious if you ever speak to someone over the internet. So when I was 14 and still in high school, my local area was going through a weird stage where someone was trying to contact a lot of the 14-year-olds and see if they wanted to join an escort agency. This was done over Facebook, and of course, most of the girls just ignored these messages. However, my friends and I thought it'd be funny if we ended up messaging this person back. Obviously, bad idea. We weren't serious about meeting up with this person, we really just thought it was a big joke. However, once I was by myself, I continued to message this person. They kept commenting on how beautiful I was and said that I was like a sister to them. I was obviously very impressionable at 14 years old and was wanting all the attention I could get. So I continued to message the person on the other side of the phone for the next couple of weeks, not realizing that I was being groomed. After the next couple of weeks, I was sitting in class and I got an extremely panicked message from my mom saying that I need to come home immediately and that she needs my phone. I guess a family friend of ours had told her about the messages and had also seen a lot of the escort advertisements. So my mom read through the messages, quickly called the police, and the conclusion was to block the account and be more careful next time. I thought it was case closed, but I was wrong. Stay tuned for part 2 and follow me on Instagram. Storytime part 2 on how I was groomed over the internet at the age of 14. So after the police took several statements from my mom and I was told to block the account and just be more cautious, I thought everything was done. But 3 years later, I was sitting with my friends when I got a phone call. The police had contacted me saying that my statement had come up again in another case. This is when they let me know that it wasn't an escort agency at all. It was a man who was sitting by his computer and messaging young girls to come meet him. He had been doing this to hundreds of girls for the past 15 years. The next couple years of my life were filled with police interviews and statements, waiting for actions for me and his other victims. The guy had a trial but pleaded not guilty, which meant that we all had to go to court. The court date was set, but obviously the coronavirus became a huge issue, and it was set to be moved to another date, which I was very thankful about because I was 7 months pregnant with my daughter, and just overall fearful of what would happen. So this guy had a warrant out for his arrest and he didn't show up for his plea bargain, so he was put out as a missing person, which we were all notified of, but that scared me to death. However, we ended up getting a phone call recently saying that they found the man and he had taken his own life. And that's how everything ended. I hope everyone stays safe, and if you have a story you'd like to share, follow me on Instagram and DM me.
After moving to a new city, I met this guy on Tinder. Our relationship was progressing really fast, and after a few weeks of dating, I found out I was pregnant. We went to the hospital where they confirmed I was pregnant, but very early on. My boyfriend was furious. He said he didn't sign up for this, and he knew people who could quote-unquote get rid of it. I told him I'm going through with this, with or without him. I didn't speak to him for a couple days when he reached out saying he wants to be part of his child's life. He moved in immediately so that we could start saving money. The morning after he moved in, he made breakfast for me. I was extremely nauseous and not in the mood to eat anything. He started yelling at me and saying it's for the baby, I can't be selfish. Less than 24 hours later, I was bleeding uncontrollably. He told me it was nothing and I shouldn't seek help. When the bleeding didn't stop, I went to the hospital where they told me I was no longer pregnant. I had no suspicion he had anything to do with it, so we stayed together. Weeks later, I finally kicked him out because of the abuse he was giving me and my dogs. I found out I was pregnant and I told my OB the situation, and that's when she told me I most likely didn't miscarry but was given something to dispel my pregnancy. My daughter is now 2 but still live in fear of seeing him in public.
So my class got let out a little early, so I decided to go to Dunkin' to grab something to eat before I have another class and then work and everything. But I haven't eaten today, so I'm a little hangry, so I'm more irritable than usual. And as I was getting to the door, somebody else was coming out and their hand was like on the handle, so I was like, okay, let me move out of the way. So I moved to the side, and then they moved to the side, and I was like, oh, okay. So I reached to the door handle, and then they reached for it again. So I moved back again, and they moved back again. So I was like, come on, you can come through, and they said the same thing. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna open the door, they're gonna come in, or come out, they're gonna get out of my way so I can go eat. So I reached for the door handle, and they reached for it too, and I was like, no, I'm just yanking this door, I am opening it, not them. End of story. So I opened the door and nobody's there, and then I closed the door again and realized I've been arguing with my reflection in the glass this whole time.
If you're ever driving late at night, don't do what they did.
2 boys picked up a girl on the side of the road while they were on their way to a school dance. In the car, she kept saying that she was cold, so one of the boys gave her his jacket. But when the night ended and they were about to drop her off, the girl accidentally left with the jacket. So the boys said that they would just come back the next day to get it. But when they came back and knocked on her door, they discovered something that would make them question what is real and what isn't. An old woman opened the door and asked them who they were looking for. After talking to her for a while, it was revealed that the girl they found on the side of the road was her daughter. But the thing is, she had been dead for 12 years. She was killed in a car accident at the same street corner they first saw her. The old woman pointed to a cemetery down the road and said, "That's where we buried her." The boys didn't believe her at first. They'd spent the whole night with this girl, so they knew that she had to be real. But they went to the cemetery and saw the boy's jacket draped over a gravestone. And on the gravestone was the girl's name and the date of her death, exactly 12 years ago to the day.